So you've reached the end of Secrets of the North and are ready to take on the Phantom Muspah. This can be a very intimidating boss, but when broken down into its mechanics, it really isn't too bad. It can also be very rewarding to kill after the quest, boasting a great loot table. Though note that the post-quest version is significantly more powerful than the quest boss. For the purposes of this guide, I'll be facing off against the post-quest version, but the mechanics are identical to the quest version. Firstly, stats. The key stats here are going to be magic and ranged. I'm going to say that 70 range and 70 mage are hard requirements, but the higher you have, the better. As for other stats, 45 prayer for the 15% boosting range in magic prayers is extremely beneficial, but at a minimum, 40 prayer is absolutely necessary for protection from range. For defense, 40 is likely sufficient, but again, higher is better. As you can see here in this example, I've got decently high magic and range stats, but not crazy high either. Now, time for gear. This setup is the absolute minimum I recommend, and for the most part are all either very cheap to buy or easy enough to get on an Ironman. A couple exceptions here. The Abyss Assembler can easily be an accumulator, the Imbued God Cape can easily be a regular God Cape, the Divine Rune Pouch can totally be a normal rune pouch, and the Zamorak Prayer Book could be any other offhand, though I'd recommend a magic accuracy boosting offhand. As you can see, I have a simple range switch with diamond bolts for range damage, and a sapphire bolt switch that you'll see the reason for later on in the video. I also have runes for ice burst in my rune pouch, and I am on the ancient spellbook. For supplies, not a whole lot is needed. I have a ranging potion and a super defense potion, 3 prayer potions, and a couple of super energies. Ideally this would be 1 stamina, but a stamina isn't really necessary at all. The rest should be the best food you have access to. When you're ready, head into the cave to begin the fight. Now Muspah has 2 primary forms, a gray melee form and a green ranged form. It will randomly pick one of these to take at the beginning of the fight, so be ready to switch your gear and prayers as the fight starts. First we'll talk about the gray melee form. This thing hits like a truck and will mess you up even through prayer, so to mitigate it, we're going to kite it and freeze it with our ice burst. This is actually really straightforward, just run to the far corner of the room while continuing to attack. It is very possible to splash a ton on Muspah, so if it does get too close, make sure you turn on Protect from melee, otherwise you can leave it off. The only other thing to make sure that you avoid is the spikes that appear as the fight continues while kiting the Muspah, as running into these will damage you. Now for the green phase, which is more complex for sure. For this phase you'll attack with range while praying range as well. That's not all, however, as the Muspah also has a magic attack during this phase, which is channeled with a distinct animation and this sound. When Muspah uses this attack, you'll have to flick to protect from magic until it hits, and then back to protect from range. If you miss this prayer switch, you'll take a massive amount of damage and be inflicted with a prayer draining effect that lasts a short while. It's impossible to cleanse this without the Arceus spell Ward of Arceus, but it also only drains 18 prayers, so it's not too much to worry about. So the fight will continue with that form that Muspah started with until you do about 100 damage, then it'll swap to the other form. When this happens, a spike will appear under you and you'll have to move away to avoid damage and knockback. What I recommend is that as you see the form change happen, first click off your current tile and then go back to swapping your gear and prayers. Now Muspah also has 2 other special attacks, each of which it'll use only once during the fight. The first is Lightning Clouds, where Muspah teleports around the room quickly and sends damaging entities across the arena. I found it best to try to avoid these and don't worry about damaging the boss too much during this attack. The second special is Homing Spikes, where Muspah will send 2 spikes that follow you across the arena for about 20 seconds. I found these not to be too much of a hazard, especially if the boss is on its melee phase, where you'll be running around the room anyway. The last phase of the fight begins when Muspah is about 20% health, where it will teleport to the center of the room and charge up a massive attack that will hit the entire room. The only way to avoid the damage is to hide behind spikes which block the attack. After the massive charge attack, Muspah will gain a prayer shield and be in its ranged form. This is where those sapphire bolts come into play, as they have a special effect that when triggered will drain a lot of this shield. The only unfortunate part is you're kind of a sitting duck until these trigger, and there's not a whole lot you can do with this setup. If you're confident with it, you can prayerful smite when you attack to get a bit more prayer drain going, but otherwise you'll just have to hope for the bolt specials and wait for the shield to fall. The final phase of the fight is a regular ranged phase, so pray ranged and keep an eye out for those magic attacks. The only other thing that happens is lots of spikes will appear around the room, so make sure you click off the tile you're on when you see them. It's unfortunately very possible for the room to entirely fill with spikes if you don't kill the boss quick enough, so if this happens, just reset and try again. And that's all there is to it. Once Muspah dies, you'll have your quest completion at hand. Now there are a lot of other ways and strategies to kill this boss, such as the step back method, so it's worth looking into if you want a more in-depth guide into killing Muspah without ancients. However, I thought this would be a simpler introductory method that's hopefully enough to get your first kill and complete the Secrets of the North quest. Now of course, I can't go without thanking the members who have joined the channel so far. Your support means so much to me and helps me to create more of these videos and guides. And of course, a double huge thank you to that top tier supporter, Kittyline. Thank you so much for the extra support. Okay, that's all for me. Good luck killing the Muspah, and I'll see you in the next video.